Hi everyone, hope you are all doing well. After the comparison between the new weather seal 1024 and the old version, you can find a link to the video up here. I thought it was nice to make the next level comparison between the new 1024 and the Big Daddy 8-16. I was really curious to see how the 8-16 performs. These two lenses are completely different. The Fujifilm 8-16 is the widest angle lens Fujifilm produces. The rectilinear 8-16 lens boasts an angle of view very similar to that of a 12-24mm optic in a 35mm system, and it's mainly designed for landscape and architecture photography. This ultra-wide-angle zoom has been created with an incredible 20 elements in 13 groups, including 4 aspherical, 3 extra low dispersion, and the 3 super ED elements. The two front lens elements are treated with a nano GI coating to eliminate ghosting and flare. The lens also features a correction element that adjusts according to the position of the zoom in order to achieve edge-to-edge sharpness. The 8-16 is huge and heavy. It weighs 805 grams and measures just over 12 centimeters in length. Compared to the 1024, it weighs twice as much and is 3 centimeters longer. So there is a substantial size difference between the two. Also, its retail price of around 1,600 versus the 1,000 of the new 1024 makes it quite expensive for many photographers. Unlike many of the other lenses in the X series lineup, the 8-16 is not the kind of setup you can use one-handed for very long. I used it for an entire day in Venice without a camera strap, and at the end of the day my hands were a bit stressed out. Anyway, paired with a XT4 or XT3, the balance is quite good, with a total weight of around 1.6 kg. That's something to keep in mind. I think it handles a bit awkwardly on the lightweight camera bodies as the Fuji X-T30. The setup feels very front-heavy, to be honest. I personally found its weight to be an issue when traveling, especially for photographers like me who likes to travel as light as possible. This is the first lens in the X series lineup that features the fixed lens hood, as the front elements of the lens is curved. It comes with a large front cap that attaches to the sides of the built-in plastic petal-shaped hood. The large bulbous elements on the 8-16 means that I'm not able to use normal filters. So I'm forced to use a completely different filter system, which would be too big and impractical to travel live with. So for me personally, being able to mount standard filters on a wide-angle lens has always been an important consideration, which is why I'm a huge fan of the 10-24. The build quality is excellent. This lens is built like a tank. The mounting plate and the entire lens body are made of metal, with the exception of the fixed petal-shaped lens hood that also protect the protruding convex front element. The zoom ring is in the middle of the lens and has 4 markings at 8, 10, 12 and 16 mm. It has a short throw from 8 to 16 mm. Moreover, the 8-16 has the traditional aperture ring on the lens barrel, which allows you to set the aperture in third steps, with the actual aperture marking shown on the lens barrel. In terms of weather sealing, I didn't really have the opportunity to test the weather resistance of the lens, but in my experience with all the other red badge lenses I own, I always been happy with the performance that Fujifilm gear ensures. With an extensive weather seal design, the 8-16 is able to withstand cold temperatures as low as minus 10 Celsius degrees. So the lens is definitely designed to perform in the field. Like the new 10-24, the rear of the 8-16 is connected to a metal mount that is very sturdy and features a gasket to prevent dust from making it into the rear of the lens of the camera. The 8-16 doesn't feature built-in image stabilization, whereas the new 10-24 does. So, if paired with a camera such as the X-T4, it's not a deal breaker. The Fujifilm 8-16 has an internal focusing IF system featuring a silent and very fast linear motor, while the 10-24 has a stepper motor system. Overall, for my needs, I found the autofocus to be fast and accurate on the X-T4 body and the X-T3 as well. Alright, let's have a look closer at how the lens performs at different focal lengths and apertures. To test the lens, I used the X-T4 and the X-T13 mounted on the tripod. Slight changes are due to the slight changes in natural light during the session. Let's have a look. What makes the Fuji 8-16 unique besides the aperture f2.8 or the weather ceiling is for sure its minimum 8mm focal length. Since the 10-24 is just 2mm narrower than the 8-16 at the widest focal length, at first glance the difference doesn't look so much. But in terms of angle of view, the difference is huge. I'm in Photoshop here. This scene is captured with the 8-16 at 8mm. This one is another one captured from the same position using the 10-24 at 10mm. With the 8-16 we have around 20% of the frame more. So we have this space on the top and the bottom of the frame and on the right and the left side. Right. So that's a lot. This 2mm is also very useful when we find ourselves working in a very small space. For instance, this lens would be very useful last year when I was photographing the ice caves in Iceland, where, contrary to what is commonly believed, space there is extremely tight. Now let's have a look at the overall sharpness. Here on the left we have the 8-16 and here we have the 10-24. Let's zoom in. There. From what I can see from my test, nothing too technical of course, at the extreme focal length the 8-16 has a very slight disadvantage in terms of sharpness compared to the 10-24, especially here in the extreme corners. It happens because of a rather strong field curvature. To me, the 10-24 appears to be more defined and it looks a little bit sharper. For sure, the 8-16 gives you more coverage than the 10-24 and is very clear in this area, and here we have a lot more informations on the left side. Here a sequence of images shot at the wider focal length of 8mm. The overall sharpness at f2.8 is quite good, even though there is a little softening of detail in the far corners of the image. The performance peak is achieved in the f4, f11-ish range. Here, this one, and this one, and that's around f16. The diffraction effect becoming more visible. At 10mm, on the left the 8-16, on the right the 10-24. The 8-16 looks a bit more sharper. Let's have a look on the corners where we should see some improvements. Yeah. The sharpness on the corners of the 8-16 is way better than the 10-24. Yeah, that's really good. And here at the maximum focal length for the 8-16 at 16mm, and here we have a 17.4mm, so we are around that focal length. So let's zoom in and have a look. Yeah, there is a slight advantage for the 8-16. It's a little bit sharper. Let's have a look here on the corner. Yeah. Not too much at the extreme focal length. Not too much. They are quite close, but I think that the 8-16 is still better. The performance of the 8-16 is very consistent at different focal length, while the 10-24 suffers when zoomed in. The 8-16 shows excellent overall sharpness, especially in the extreme corners. That's really good. This is one of the main topics on this lens. Distortion is typically quite high on an ultra-wide-angle lens, and as opposed to some reviews I saw here on YouTube, the 8-16 is not an exception. But the fact that it's a rectilinear lens, you have minimal up and down distortion in the extreme corners. In other words, it's a lens with a very little barrel or pincushion distortion. However, some software automatically applies the lens correction. That's because Fuji embeds their raw files with lens correction data. Lightroom applies this correction during processing and Capture One as well. Let me show you. I'm gonna click on the crop tool and we can see that Capture One automatically cropped the image, cutting out of the frame the warped areas it's used to correct the lens distortion. If you want, you can recrop the image without losing resolution. So the 8-16 is not completely immune to lens distortion. There is some obvious fall off in the corners of this ultra-wide-angle lens. The highest level of vignetting can be seen at 8mm, where it reaches a bit over 2 stops. Working on the range of 12-16 reduces the vignetting a little. The vignetting correction is applied automatically if you work with Lightroom or Photoshop, so you should not even see it when going through your images. With Capture One, you have to drag the light fall-off slider to 100% to correct it. Both lenses are very good with chromatic aberration and are not a problem with these Fujifilm lenses. Anyway, in this respect, the 8-16 performs way better than the 10-24. If we have a look closer, here on the left we have the 8-16 and on the right we have the 10-24 without any chromatic aberration correction applied. And without any correction, the 8-16 looks really, really good. Let's apply the chromatic aberration. It's even better. And 10-24. Yeah, definitely the 8-16 is far superior in terms of chromatic aberration handling. Like my previous video of the 10-24 working with Lightroom or Capture One, you could end up with a slightly different result, but in both cases they are fine. The 8-16 produces a very nice Sunstar when stopped down to f16 or f22 at both ends of the focal range. 9 on the 8-16 versus 7 aperture blades on the 10-24 mean more solar spikes for the 8-16. Of course, we can catch some artifacts, but they are small and concentrated along one line. Great! The 8-16 is an exceptional lens, a true premium product. Compared to the new 10-24, the Fujifilm 8-16 is 2mm wider and is 1 aperture stop faster. On the flip side, unlike the 10-24, it doesn't feature built-in image stabilization, it's bigger, and it weighs and costs twice as much. So, I really enjoyed it. This is a really nice lens to use and the optical quality is absolutely wonderful. Its target audience is for sure those that play in the niche spaces such as ultra-wide landscape, architecture, and even astrophotography. Due to its large bulbous element, it's unable to take any screw-on filters, and this one is a rather big problem for me personally, as I love being able to use filters without having to carry large filters holders and filters when traveling. Okay guys, that's it. As always, I hope you found this video useful, and if you have any question, drop me a comment below. For other videos about Fujifilm stuff, check out the playlist here on my channel. So, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao!